All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the No Rest for the Wicked Inside reaction and discussion. I was playing around with some Streamyard settings earlier, so it actually ran the podcast intro when I hit go live. That's really good information to know. I'm excited to see that they're adding in some new features there, but we've got a lot to be excited about today for those of you who have been following this game, whether actively like myself or just passively, just waiting for the next big thing. Today is their Wicked Inside. Here in roughly an hour, they're going to kick this thing off with a bunch of reveals. Lots of speculation going on in the Discord, the official Discord right now for the Wicked Inside. And a lot of the speculation revolves around the release date. Now, when it comes down to it, April, I think the 18th or sometime around that time frame will be the 1 year anniversary of this game releasing. So there's going to be a lot to be excited about just with the fact that we've had this game for a year. But a lot of people thinking, roughly speaking, 2 to 3 weeks from this date. So early April for the official The Breach release. Now, I have an expectation that we're going to get that release date here in today's reveal. Now, what you see up on screen right now is just the teaser trailer. I thought that would be really good, especially before everything kind of kicks off here, to do kind of a sound test, make sure that you guys can hear the stream, that you can hear the audio from wherever, whatever they end up posting. I did see a comment in chat talking about, is there an official site that is going on? I'm going to bet that it's going to be on their official YouTube page. You might want to lock it into the Discord if you guys want that direct link. I will try to make sure I have the links and everything in the description of this. So if you don't want my commentary, if you don't want my reaction to it, you can go just watch it for yourself, kick back and enjoy. And if you guys want to then participate in a kind of a discussion, just let me know, because I can highlight all of y'all's comments and I love it. Also, Jay is asking, or he says they hope they focus in on the story. That is what The Breach is going to be about. This is going to add a bunch of things. I know there's a lot I'm personally excited for multiplayer, but everything they've said, and unless they bring out some surprises and do some different things, this is a story update, a boss update. We're getting new zones, I think at a minimum 2 new areas, 2 whole new areas, and perhaps even completing some of the others. And if you guys haven't seen, they have lots of little secrets. They do a lot of real in-depth, kind of aspect where you can kind of push yourself, challenge yourself, ultimately, find what you're looking for. But so just note that this is going to be the update here for you, Jay. This is not the Crucible update. There are probably going to be some tweaks. We do know XP is coming back to the Crucible, which for me is a real gift because it was the only thing that I felt was the one miss that they had with the Crucible update. But it's wild to think that it's been so long. And a lot of that I've talked about in my videos. They have been going through a lot of behind the scenes. Unless they have a new announcement, and they made changes since the last time that I had some inside information here in the last couple of weeks ago. They will be self-publishing. And that means every dollar that you spend buying the game goes to Moon Studios as opposed to the publisher, and then they get a kickback. Now, this is a great question from Michael. And what's going on, Wes? Watching over on Twitch. Speaking of which, guys, if you want to watch wherever you want to watch, I'm live everywhere: Twitch, YouTube, X. That's going to be it. Also, for those of you, I saw a comment today like, why are you quitting? It's like, no, I'm just on a Lenten fast from content. This is basically my one exception. Obviously, I said that I'm going to play the update when it comes out, kind of going into it as these 2 minor exceptions. Anyway, Wes, what's up, dude? Okay, so Michael says, console release date yet? Would love to give you guys a console release date. I would love it if the game came to early access on consoles as well, because this is the number one question. But if we're going to be just the best thing we can do, the healthiest thing we can do for ourselves is not expect a console release date. I do, though, share that the drive. I think bringing this game into early access on consoles would be huge. I do wonder if that's going to be something that we see happen this year. But I mean, I will freak out if they do it, right? Like, this is going to be exciting. That would be maybe a clippable moment if we get that kind of news. It's going to be a very exciting time when we can welcome in console players and we can finally start to answer that. But I do fear that we have a little bit more of a wait for the consoles themselves. All right, I'm gonna take a half a second and I'm gonna play this, and I'd like it if those of you hanging out on YouTube are there. The other thing I'd like to do prior to the big show, Destin Legary posted an interview with Thomas over on his YouTube. It is now open for everybody, so I figured we can kind of hang out, watch that, talk about it, answer y'all's questions that are popping off in the chat. But let's just kick this off, make sure this is all working and sounding well. Ooh, well, let's talk about that here in a second, Deska. That's awesome. Tip of the hat. Oh, and if you like the content, guys, that like button, as Wes says, is a great way of supporting the content for free. Oh, yeah. That is so disgusting. I love it. I'm not a horror guy, but this kind of has obviously a hint of it. But look at it, freaking Beastmaster Summoner right there. Let's go. All right, I need some assistance from chat. If you guys can weigh in, can you hear the video audio? Bruh. Okay, we definitely can hear it. Doesn't need to be louder because I've got it pretty low. Look at the leaves, like just kind of rustling. It just is gorgeous. I'm wondering if this is either new Zone or new Crucible or whatever.
Do you hear it?
Growing through his hand. Fascinating. All right, let's up it here a little bit. All right. March 11th, that's today. All right, we're gonna kick back to this. All right, I've turned up the volume just a little bit. Dude, yeah, we haven't had, like, the story, we only got one bit of it. Is that any better, Mads? All right. Okay, yeah, that's probably due to the streaming software itself, Mads. I'm actually also doing a local recording, so after this, I'll have a much better capture.
Do you hear it?
Do you hear it?
The forest is speaking.
This is gonna be good, guys. All right, we made it to the day. All right, see here, it is officially 10:07. The Wicked Insight kicks off in less than an hour. But just to kind of keep the conversation going, I'm kind of curious to see what Destin's talked about. So let me see if I can get the link here. Oh, jump all the way to the end. My mouse has been weird. I think I need to get a new mouse or do some troubleshooting. Ba-da-ba-ba-bow. And let me go and say, put the link in here. Destin interview. Boom. All right, cool. All right, let's let this kick off.
Brought to you by people just like you. This first launch on Patreon and to YouTube members, so a big thanks to them for backing.
Boom.
If you would like to do so, you can go to patreon.com/SafeStatePlus or become a member here on YouTube. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Thomas Mahler. Thomas, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Now, for those who don't know, your big game right now, it's No Rest for the Wicked, right?
That's correct.
There's the pipe, baby.
The Ori
He's serious.
series we are working with for 10 years, and now it's all my time goes into No Rest for the Wicked right now.
I gotta ask, you just took out the biggest pipe I've ever seen. Can I see it?
Yeah.
Oh my!
I'm just waiting for pipes in
Why
game. He
such a
talked about that like a
long
year ago.
one with the.
Well, that
Why
actually
that
gets
pipe?
me to the next segue, right? Like
Yeah.
we are actually introducing pipes
There
in
it
No Rest
is.
for the Wicked pretty soon,
Hmm.
because I am a pipe smoker, and I just love the chillness of it, right? Like the mood that it puts you in of like contemplative and so on. I just like church warden pipes. I don't know why, but I like those the most. So this is a church warden pipe.
It's good seeing you,
It
Skyline.
brings me back to Hobbit or Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
and when Gandalf
exactly
takes
it,
out
yeah.
his.
And on that note, like when he's just talking about the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, that is what they are striving for with No Rest for the Wicked, where if you think of 1.0, that is Fellowship of the Ring. So that's the epic that he wants to tell. That is what he hopes to build here. And I guess any callback to the incredible Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, you're not going to hear me complain.
Well, I'm making an RPG now, so gotta adjust.
Yeah, so when I was still at IGN, I think I just did like one guide video about No Rest for the Wicked and gave some just a high level overview of like, here's some stuff that you can do. But if I remember right, I got to Endgame and I really, really enjoyed No Rest for the Wicked. I played it when it was like first launched in early access. What has the success level been like for this game? Because it's quite different from Ori. And it's sort of a new world for you. You were saying just before we started.
It's been really good for us. So, I mean, when we started this, right, we had absolutely no idea what would happen, right? This was a total shot in the blue because we released Ori, and Ori was just a packaged product, right? But with games like No Rest for the Wicked, there is like, I don't see a way of how this game could have been done without a huge first public release, right? So we discussed this because of the complexity of ARPGs and so on, right? There's just no way that you could just, hey, we work for 3-4 years in silence, then we release this, and now it's perfect, right? It's just, it doesn't work that way. The product is so incredibly complex. So we discussed this up and down, and then ultimately we decided, yeah, we'll do early access. So then we'll build a community, right? We'll get all the data from, looking at, hey, how are people actually playing the game? Do we have any stuff that is overpowered? How are our stats looking? Let's look at the telemetry and so on. And yeah, since then, we've been polishing the crap out of it. We've looked at everything that the community has been saying and so on. We polished like crazy, and now the last update that we shipped was in July last year, I think it was
the end of July.
Then there's been a bit of silence. We will discuss that in our next Wicked Inside. And we now just are basically doing the same thing that Larian did and so on, right? Where we just want to perfect the game in early access so that we can then in 1.0 release it with like on all platforms and like make sure that it's exactly the kind of masterpiece that people expect from Moon Studios.
Now, I have heard from
the point here, and to kind of call back earlier to the conversation around the console release, his reference to what Larian did, and one of the things that a lot of people wrote off Baldur's Gate 3 because it was just in early access for so long, but then ultimately they got Baldur's Gate 3. I think essentially his view here, and just that line of him saying that they want to kind of perfect it, that in of itself lends it better to do that and then release on consoles, because you get a bigger, wider range of excitement, as opposed to like, well, I've been playing that game for 3 years. Like, okay, it's out now. Like, okay, yeah, that's where I start to hear and lean against the idea that we might see a console release this year in and of itself. And 1.0, I don't think it's coming out this year. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It just timeline wise, where we're at in terms of what we know is coming and the bigger things that they want, I think we still have a little bit more runway. So don't don't burn out anytime soon, guys. Just keep it, at a steady pace.
Just paying attention online that some people think early access is the way to go. It is a great way to I don't know, fail fast if you're going to fail, or
Mhm.
hit the ground running and get important feedback from the community. Where do you land on it now that you've done an early access title? Do you think it's been a success, or is that the way people should be doing it going
I
forward?
am a huge proponent of it, right? Like I think it makes a ton of sense if you listen to Sven Winke and so on, right? Like they are even trying, like they wouldn't have any reason to, right? But they even said like, hey, we'll do early access again with the next game after Baldur's Gate 3 and so on. And I'm in a similar boat. It depends, I think, obviously on the production, right? Like on the game that you're making. If I'd make something like Ori again, I wouldn't do it, probably, right? But for something like No Rest for the Wicked, there's just no way around it. For any ARPG, there's just no way around it. And even like Blizzard used to do this in the past, they just called it, like a public beta or something, right? And there's this thing of like, hey, when it's early access, it's already paid, right? But I think it ultimately just boils down to, like, do gamers get a good deal, right? And with what we have set up, I think what we just have to deliver, what we have to make sure of, is that they get a sensational deal, right? That is just by 1.0, this is packed full of value and you'll just love it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Beyond that, where do you get your best feedback? Like, is it like a form, or do you just read online? How does the team get the information about what they need to improve?
I mean, it's all of those things. It's we have a forum where people post, where they basically, like, after they discuss stuff and so on, they usually post things like, hey, here's what the excuse me, what the community decided, right? Like what the community came up with. So forum is a really good place to post feedback. But then we also have our Discord, where people talk more in real time, right? And like we shoot the shit and so on. And like I'm also in there all the time, and it's fun to talk to players and like just bringing up ideas like, hey, I've just sat in one of our systems things, and here's some ideas that we've been discussing, right? And then it's just shoot back and forth with players. That is really interesting. So it's there. It's also like we're looking at my X feed, what people post to me there and so on. It's all of that. In emails, we get tons of emails still. So we just have to aggregate all of that together.
Are you doing the X Blue Sky split like a lot of people? I do that a little bit, but I'm less active on Blue Sky.
Yeah, I've never been that crazy about social media. I do it, because
you do it because you have to. That's
and every now and then it's fun to share my opinion, but I regularly get scolded for like, oops, I forgot to post on Facebook and all of this stuff.
Yeah. For people watching, you're wearing a scarf. It's very cold where you are, right?
Yeah, yesterday we had like minus 11 degrees. It's freezing and all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another cold day. I just want to make sure it's not like a fashion statement or anything like that, so people realize, hey, it's snowing in places in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think about the social media space these days? It just seems it's really divisive, and it's not even about the controversial stuff necessarily. Everything is divisive, and it's really exhausting, if I'm being honest.
I find it incredibly exhausting. Like I've never, like when I grew up, I never had this much or heard this much discourse about politics, right? And to me, it's just too much. Like I kind of like decided for myself that I'm not gonna take part in all of this politics stuff, at least not like attacking it like that, because I'm an artist. I want to focus on our art, right? And I think everybody should have their own personal politics. I don't need to discuss that. It's just too much for me. I want to focus.
I wonder how much of that is also driven by the fact that social media, like if you think of it in terms of a game, I've talked about this several times, but not to like go into all of that stuff that I've shared before, is I think there's an aspect that if you're not posting, if you're not sharing on social media, you're losing. Like if you think of it in terms of game theory, and I think that's one of the things that makes it so divisive, is that, and that has the tendency, think of it in terms of MMO RPGs, right? Like you could have a game with a million different factions to join, but then ultimately everything kind of boils down into two, like it naturally as humans, in terms of like to be competitive, you have that. So I see that happening a lot. I think a lot of it ends up being a lot fake. I in my mind, I think one of the biggest problems with social media is there's just a severe lack of integrity when it comes to both content creation, but also in what people post. If the game, it's kind of like, you ever heard the phrase, if you show me the incentive, I'll show you the result. And I think essentially right now the incentive is just about capturing as absolute much attention as possible, good, bad, negative, like positive. It's all attention, and then that drives to a lot of just trying to score points on the board, as opposed to actually being and having a meaningful discussion.
And my team, like, we just want to focus on making sure that we make great games, and that we should share the love of gaming, and especially kind of like the love of No Rest for the Wicked and the stuff that we're doing and so on. But yeah, it's too much for me as well.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
I think a lot of us all agree.
I'm curious to compare and contrast. So you have this ARPG. It's out in early access. It's really fun. I really enjoyed the difficulty about it. That sort of like scales as you play, and the challenge it offers you right away with the first boss in like the rainy, muddy area. Right before you go into the sort of castle region.
Sanctuary.
I am curious, however, what was it like making this versus rewinding in time, and what was it like with Ori?
We always approach it in a similar way, right? Like, so I mean, our approach is very similar to how Nintendo designs games, I think, in the sense that it just all has to be like fun comes first, right? And even on Ori, we had people constantly telling us, hey, the game is too hard, right? Especially kind of like more from the Microsoft side. It was a lot of, oh my God, but the game looks beautiful, right? Like, wouldn't it be more fun if everybody could enjoy it, right? But I'm on the Miyazaki side on this, right? That they're like, that has to be really carefully tuned, right? So that, because there is this thing psychologically, right, where it's like, no, you have to overcome challenge, right? You always have to have these moments where we present you with something and you feel like you can't do it, right? But then we get you to actually do it. And that is that moment of like, oh my God, like when it's a puzzle, right? Like that moment of like, I don't get it. This doesn't make any sense to me. And then you solve it and it's like, you feel like a genius, right? Or when it's combat, that it just feels like, oh my God, I died 5 times. What do I do? And then you start thinking, right? And then you do it again. And at some point you do it. And then we literally had people on streams, right? Like when they held the controller really tightly when they played Ori. And then they finally, after 15 attempts, did something and they threw the controller through the air, right? Those kind of ones, like those are the gaming moments that I love, right?
See, and that's the thing that I have been, it's been interesting on my journey through like just video games the last couple of years, having discovered Souls-like and that challenge. It is so much more satisfying to overcome that challenge in a game like No Rest for the Wicked or in like Elden Ring than it is just in terms of kind of breezing through everything. I know not everybody wants that level of challenge, and I think one of the things that always kind of kicks off as a kind of a counterpoint to these kind of discussions is accessibility. There's a lot of people that are like, hey, it's a game, I just want to enjoy it and experiencing it. But there is something in which that if the artists themselves say, this is what we're trying to make, this is the product, this is what it's going to be, I'm all for. And I've been really quite really happy with stepping into Souls-like games and getting that challenge. And it does, I don't know for anybody else out there, but as somebody who grew up in the NES and the SNES era, like those games tend to feel way more like games used to feel with that challenge, kind of that unapologetic challenge. And some of it, when you think about the arcade games, was by design to get you quarters, but that is in and of itself pretty cool. Jay says, Monster Hunter Wilds is a big example of making a game too easy or accessible can lose a little of the magic. Incredible game, don't get me wrong. I'm looking forward to playing it. For those of you who haven't seen, kind of like my last video, like I'm on a Lenten fast from video games and news with the exception of March the 11th, and whenever they decide to release the update, I've been completely kind of just cut off, which has been really nice. And going back to the conversation about social media, guys, I tell you, I'm having an incredible Lent. I'm also doing something crazy, and we'll talk about it more when I get back after Easter. But I'm fasting from food, and I'm basically just eating on Sundays. But it's been amazing. It was a challenge at first, but now I'm just going on, feeling good and strong. Anyway, that was a random aside. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate that. I'm glad you enjoyed Monster Hunter Wilds. I cannot wait to play it. I'm looking forward to that.
So, it's to me, it's that just making sure that people get these moments, right? That when I think about how do I play a game, right? That there are these moments of I doubt myself and then I do it anyway, right? Like I succeeded, right? I think that is really, really important.
Yeah, I definitely had a few of those moments when I was going through the main storyline of No Rest. Even that first boss, it's definitely, you're like, okay, how good are you really? Check, you know.
Yes.
I think I got through them pretty quickly, but then, you know, quite shortly after that, it gets much harder.
Not to brag, but I think I one-shot the boss, and I think this is on stream. Maybe I'm misremembering. But I think I went through and was like, oh, he was a challenge, and I won. It felt great. And then I went back and was doing it again and was getting owned time and time again. And I was like, man, I think I just got lucky the first time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're always tuning and tweaking, right? We also don't want to make a game that is just for the hardcore, right? We want it to be fairly accessible, but accessible doesn't mean we're dumbing it down, right? Accessible just means, to me, in an ideal world, accessible should mean, oh, if this particular thing is too hard for you right now, well, there's all these other things you can do, right? All these other options that you can do, and then you can come back when you're a little bit stronger, right? That's kind of like how we're approaching it. I'm generally not that huge of a fan of like difficulty modes, right? Because it's always a global thing, and it's like this whole one size fits all.
Facts,
right? But
dude.
one size often doesn't fit all. I'm more in the camp of no, difficulty should be decided dynamically on the player level, right? So that if something is too hard for me, I can learn something here, I can do this over there, I can get better at that. And then I come back, and then getting this feeling of, wow, I've learned so much. I'm so much stronger now. I'm so much better now. Now I finally did it. I feel like a rock star.
Yeah. I definitely get that emotional response when defeating a boss, and not just in your game, like in just video games in general. And that's a sign that the creator has really managed, the team that created it has really managed to resonate with the player in an important way, right? And I don't know, do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I think in many ways it's always a discussion kind of like between the game designer and the player, right? Like that we basically say, look, I mean, ultimately we are making games for the people out there, right? Like I'm also very much making them for myself because I want to be able to play my games and just enjoy the hell out of them. But ultimately, we want to make sure players have fun, right? And that means, well, you're playing stuff that we prepared specifically for you to have fun, to enjoy, right? So it's always a bit of a conversation between developer and player.
Speaking of player, I've seen you posting about how your son's playing through the Ori series
Yes.
right now, and your son's asking you whether or not you're going to do anything with the Ori franchise going forward. What would you tell him, and what would you tell me?
It's not just their son, his son, it's Microsoft. He's been on many calls of Microsoft's like, hey, how about an Ori 3? And they say, hey, we're focusing on No Rest for the Wicked right now. I do think there's a check. I do think Microsoft could write a check that actually gets all of that done, right? Where I'm just saying, you know, and then even Moon Studios has expressed interest in making, you know, Banjo 3. Come on, let's make that happen too, guys. Come on, Microsoft. You spent $69 billion on Activision. Toss a little bit to Thomas, man.
Tell me right now, like, is there any world where that could continue?
I can't say anything about that right now.
Oh, that's
Just
actually
hard
good
no
news.
comment,
I can't say anything
huh? What
about
did
it.
you tell?
Did
Can
it.
you tell me what you told your son?
Let's go.
I basically just told him, you know, in a way, because he always kind of like has some ideas right now. I'm playing a lot of games with him, And he already kind of like on paper designed his own little Zelda game and how he would do it. He already told me, you know, like, hey, if I would design Ori, I would make sure that Naru is playable and Kuro is playable and all of that stuff. And so I basically just told him, look, if I don't get to do it, then, you know, you will have to. So that.
On a side, Jay says he has a feeling that multiplayer might have to be wait till 1.0. They're not going to wait that long. In fact, they've been testing and playing with it, and I think that with this update, we're actually going to also see the account system come into play, because for those who don't know, this is going to be a cross-play, cross-save, play anywhere game. So whether you started on PC, you want to pick it up on the Switch too, you want to play it on your Xbox or your PlayStation. Your account, your characters are all going to be there. And so I do think that that's going to be part of it. And we had a chat earlier talking about progress. Your realms are still going to be there, and they're not going to delete your character and all that. But with the new update, there is going to be that kind of starting fresh. And that's something to always be expected, especially in terms of early access.
That was.
I do have a feeling, because like this interview is obviously more for people who are not actively paying attention. So hopefully I'm able to provide you guys a little bit more context to what is going on behind the scenes.
The response.
It's like in the family, huh?
Yeah.
Just has that DNA.
Yeah. Well, Ori did well for us, so, we'll see.
We'll see.
Staying on Ori for a second, we had a lot of Patreon questions about Ori and No Rest. So Voodoo asked, as someone who has a friend that still rants over a pint about the difficulty of Ori, what is your view on including cheats or super accessible options in games? How do creators balance their creative vision with the paying customer wanting to enjoy themselves on their terms? That's a really good question from Voodoo.
I mean, we kind of went into this already, right? Like, I know that Celeste, for example, had these modes where it's like, hey, you could really kind of like just basically cheat, right? Straight up. And I'm a little bit divided on this whole thing, right? I remember, for example, when I was a kid, I used to love my action replay in many ways, because it also kind of like gave you some insight into how games are made. Like I strictly remember playing A Link to the Past, right? And then I wanted to know, if I cheat myself that I already have the power gloves at the start, right? Can I even go to the town and like do that already? And there's certainly some fun in that, right? But ultimately, we are very much designing games in a way where we think, well, the broadest amount of people will have fun with this, right? And we are deciding on the challenge, and challenge in many ways often means is a strict part of the fun, right? Like I could tweak Ori so that it's really easy, but also the fun level would go down, because we're not kind of like making you achieve things anymore and like doing things with the right positioning anymore, and actually playing it basically in the right way, right? So to me, it's kind of like this thing where it's just let the artist do his job, right? Like we'll just deliver that painting in the way where it's like, okay, this should be good, right? Like everybody should be able to enjoy this, but I'm not going to paint by numbers.
As someone that talks about games for a living, I would very much appreciate a difficulty for me, because I'm bad at all video games and I don't know how to beat tutorials. No, I think that narrative's pretty funny, honestly. So I just kind of go with it, because some of the best players I know for like fighting games and stuff, like Mitchell Saltzman at IGN is really strong at that, or Casey covering Monster Hunter Wilds over at IGN is doing a fantastic job. Good question from the community, though. Trace,
my stance ultimately is always, who cares, right? Like on all of this, like if you enjoy a game, it doesn't matter if you're good or bad at it, right? Like none of that matters, right? It's ultimately like, are you enjoying your experience? That's all that matters.
What do you think? Just going into feedback for a second, I think it's my opinion that a lot of the bigger studios sort of have this. I don't know if they're getting the wrong message in the game of telephone that is online discourse, but it feels like they are trying to do too many things at once, or they're trying to push the incorrect envelope. Like we have to have native 4K at 60 frames per second. It's like, is that really what gamers want? Because Returnal was 1080 native, and it was a smooth 60, and that game was one of my favorite games of the year. So do you think there's like a misinterpretation of what fans are asking for being what's versus what's being delivered?
I think you'd have to be kind of nuts to not already see that has been the case for quite some time now. We just have to look at how hard a lot of AAA games have been failing recently, right? And I think there's this world where it's like, hey, this is what developers think is really important, right? And then there's this other world where it's like, hey, here's what players actually think is really important. And those two things often really clash, right? I remember distinctly when Minecraft came out, right? A lot of people in the development community were like, is this a joke, right? This looks like a PlayStation 1 game, right? And all of that. Meanwhile, players were all like, wow, this is so much fun, right? Like, this is just incredibly fun to kind of like build your own stuff and so on, right? So that to me is a problem. A lot of times, like what I've seen is that a lot of times those developers are not really in touch with what gamers want, right? And what they're like, and the fun, basically, that the fun comes first, right? That, you know, lots of artists in the industry are often just concerned about their art, right? And not really all that concerned about, is the product that I'm making actually fun? And I've seen this in many places. We certainly had some of that at Blizzard as well, right? Which is okay, you know, like some people are just artists and they don't care that much about games. But very much at Moon, for example, we are trying to make sure that everybody who works here always kind of constantly has to play the game, because ultimately that's the product that you're making. We want you to fall in love with the product so that you're also contributing in the sense of, you know, hey, is this as much fun as it could be? So yeah, that's where I stand on that. I do think there's a huge clash between that right now. And I think that's a huge reason why AAA games right now are having such a hard time, because there's clearly, very, very clearly, a dissonance between here's what developers think is important and here's what gamers actually think is important.
Yeah, and if you're not making games for what the gamers want to play, they're not going to open up their wallets and they're not going to support the game, and it's not going to do well. Like, that is what we've, I think, been seeing in mass, in which that a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of investment has been made into things that just don't generally improve the gameplay overall. And I think that's where a lot of people just kind of are waking up from this, like, hey, you know, this games aren't all being great. I think Baldur's Gate 3 also has had a huge impact on that impact, or a huge impact on that perception, because a lot of people are like, wow, like, what, that was so incredible, and then, you know, things aren't really measuring up to that. And whether that's fair or not, that is the way it is. I see a lot of people in chat asking kind of when the official thing kicks off, roughly at 11 a.m. Central, 12 Eastern. And they're going to be on Twitch and on YouTube Live. I've got like Discord up, and it looks like, yeah, we've got the link. We'll pull that up, and I'll be sure to share that with you guys. If you want to go watch them and not me, that's perfectly fine. Find the way that you enjoy the content the best. Let me actually make sure that I've got it up, because that way we don't miss it. Twitch. All right, let me mute this just so I don't get myself. Oh, it's me. All right. And the link, Moon Studios. Oh, there it is. Follow, baby. Follow. Let's see here. Good morning. See, do they have let me unmute and see if they have like a kind of an audio. Oh, they do. Oh, it's beautiful. Okay. We got 24 minutes. Let's keep letting Destin continue on here, shall we?
And what
we
do you
probably
think
won't be able to finish this whole interview.
mainly is the the incorrect takeaway that they're focusing on?
I think it's just like built on like old ideas, right? Like, do we have to spend 6 to 8 months or more on like detailing out every single pore on a character? And what's the value that you're getting for that, right? Do players really care about that? Or could that time that you spent on these resources, right, been invested into something else, right? Into just making the game more fun? Because I think there's all these kind of like comparisons out there right now, right? Like with games like Avowed being compared to Skyrim and so on. And it's like,
Didn't they do that
You
to
know, like,
themselves? Or maybe I'm just
does it really
misremembering.
matter that much anymore? We've reached a level where it's just, graphics are not like, we're not seeing the kind of leaps anymore that we've seen back in the 80s and 90s or something, right? Where it's like, well, games come out now and it's like there's a 15-year difference, and graphically you barely can tell a difference, right? And ultimately, I think this might actually be a good thing, because that will focus us all on who can make the most fun product, not who can make the coolest looking product, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed the Path of Exile 2 director at the time, and he said graphics are important to a point,
Yeah.
but you
Yes.
really have to have the gameplay balance. That's like that 10 seconds of fun or whatever Bungie, the phrase coined by Bungie, I think.
30
Eric,
seconds.
That's exactly
30 seconds of fun.
exactly right. Like, to me, art direction is so much more important than the raw asset quality, right? Like, for example, right, at Moon, even though I was a cinematic artist at Blizzard, right, so we did sculpt everything to an insane amount of detail and so on. And you remember kind of like how hyped everybody back then was when a Blizzard cinematic came out, right? That was almost like a national holiday, right? It was like, holy shit. And that was fun, but ultimately, it's about the product, right? You have to, really focus on just fun.
I know you worked on StarCraft 2 and Diablo 3, correct?
Mostly on StarCraft 2. Yeah, I was on that team.
Did you get to touch the original Brood War chest? So one of my first forays into gaming was getting a PC, and I got the original StarCraft, the Brood War chest specifically. And the way I would challenge myself back in the day would be, I would take my Protoss build, I would see if I could beat a Zerg rush, and I would then set all the CPU players, because I would just play against CPU. I would play online a little bit because it was sort of in its infancy then. But I would set all the CPU players to like their maximum difficulty and be like, okay, can I beat a whole map? And with Protoss, sorry to nerd out for a second, with Protoss, you would, if you beat the Zerg rush by getting your pylons built and getting those turrets up, they're done. Like, you don't have to worry about the Zerg. And it really ended up becoming human versus Protoss. Like, if you get your ships up, they're done. Sorry, again, nerding out for a second. Did you use
I never worked on the original StarCraft.
Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I'm getting there. So when you go into StarCraft 2 and you're working about art direction, how much inspiration do you take from gameplay elements or the strategies used in the original game into the sequel? And what's that process like? Like, what was it like internally? Because that was a big deal when StarCraft 2 came out as a fan of the original.
Well, remember, I worked in the cinematics team, right? So I didn't actually work on the gameplay graphics in that game. Mm-hmm. And to us, it was just everything had to be on the fucking highest quality level possible, right? Like, I remember back then, that was when also Cataclysm happened, right? And that fucking dragon, like, there was a year of work that went into just that dragon for that cinematic, right? And multiple sculptors actually working on that. But I think the thing that you take away, and that Blizzard always did incredibly well, right, back then, was just factoring in readability and art direction, right? Like, if you look at StarCraft, it looks detailed, but it's incredibly readable, right? And a lot of
the Dirt Rabbit's asking, is this a new interview? This is the interview with Destin Legary. I think it came out a couple of days ago. And I saw that in the Discord, people were talking about it. I was like, oh, well, let's hang out. Let's get ready for the event and hanging out watching it. So I don't know if you've seen this interview yet or not. I've been adding my perspective and context because this interview is more geared to people who haven't really been following the game. So there's just more of a, hey, this is kind of something that's happened and yada, yada, yada. General thoughts on game design and difficulty. And so I'm just been kind of trying to fill in the gaps. The update will be, we should have a date for the update. I would set expectations to early April for that. Now, the game is going to also celebrate 1 year in April, and I do hope we're going to get I hope we get the date for the breach, and I hope we get a date for the multiplayer, or at least a window of time for the multiplayer update, which is going to be something that follows the breach update.
Times these days, what you're seeing is there's just so much noise, right? And the art direction, like,
facts, dude, facts.
A lot of times I feel like, I wonder if people really kind of like took art courses, because there's the whole, color composition and all of that, is that even taken into account anymore, right? Because you have to factor in how much can the audience actually read when something is on the screen, right? And so on. And there is this whole drive in the industry, and always has been, right, about just, everything just needs to look as photorealistic as possible, right? And if something doesn't read well, let's just blast the yellow paint on top of it, right? And it's just,
you're a yellow paint not liker, huh?
I'm more of a, games should be made in a way where art direction matters and where everything is done in a cohesive way, right? So if something doesn't read, you don't just slap something on it, right? It's like you have to ask the deeper question of like, why doesn't it read in the first place? Why do players not get it? Why do we have to put a warning sign with, shiny, sparkly things there and say, this is where you want to climb, right? And this is how you advance and so on. So it's really that. And I mean, a lot of times on Ori, I've seen that. I've been part of like dozens of user research sessions and so on, right? Where it's just very clear, kind of like the whole, how do you point players at something and how do you do that in a tasteful manner and so on, right? And a lot of times it just boils down to make sure that things are readable, that the art direction actually works in a way that also, like makes sense to the audience, right? That it's not just, has to look cool. And that's the thing in general about art, right? Like you're making a fairly shallow thing if you're just making something that looks cool, right? But the second level that makes you an actual artist, in my opinion, is that does it have meaning? Is it all done in a way where it's cohesive and you really thought it through? Every element is there for a reason, right? That's the high order bit.
I don't mean to pick on this game because I picked on it a lot when I did the preview, but if you look at something like Suicide Squad, in terms of visual elements,
I never played that game, by the way.
Good choice.
Have you seen the assets online for Suicide Squad? And if what would your reaction be to the art style? Like, what would you have tweaked or made a recommendation to adjust? Like less purple.
I just generally kind of like have the feeling right now that things are a little bit generic, right? Especially on the AAA side. And I think it's partly also the engine stuff, right? Like there's a lot of people that love the Unreal Engine right now and all of that, right? And like they just geek out on like photorealism, and now we got even more lights and more stuff and this and that, right? But I think if you look at the last 10 years or 15 years, right, everything uses PBR, which is just basically a shader set. For the materials and so on, right, where it's like, okay, physically based rendering. And the downfall of that is, though, everything kind of like looks the same, right? Like our thing is always like, hey, if I give you a postage stamp sized image of one of our games, I want people to clearly identify like that's a Moon Studios game, like that is Ori,
that's cool,
that is no
that's a really way to think about it,
because we did that also when we looked at, like, I could bet right now if I'd give you two screenshots, one of Diablo 4 and one of Path of Exile without the UI, you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference, because they all use PBR styles, and it looks very, very similar to one another. Typical person on the street, zero chance that they would really be able to differentiate between those two things, right? And to me, it's like,
I improved.
Oh, no. Accidentally jumped. My mouse has been all whacked it out. The Susano says chasing trends as well, which isn't a great idea because those trends are gone by release, because of the fact that game development now takes, like, we see games taking upwards of 7 years to make, and by the time the game comes out, it's like, yeah, everyone's kind of moved past that theme or that message, and then the game doesn't, even because of how HR, because I mean, how many people here worked at one company for 7 years? Like I haven't. I think the maximum I've ever been at a specific job is 5 years, and I hope to change that with my current job, which is wonderful. But yeah, like it's such a rare thing, so you end up seeing so much human turnover, especially in the video game industry. It is easy to hire a video game developer into application development because you get more security, higher pay, and you're not getting necessarily taken advantage of like a lot of what happens within development now. We have an ETA less than 15 minutes. If we just jump back over here to our little timer, we will jump over here in about 7 minutes to just kind of hang out at the starting soon screen, just for everybody who's curious, we're just catching up on the latest interview with Destin Liguri and Thomas.
Controller designs that you have right now, they are literally 2 decades old and haven't really been changed. Like, yeah, every now and then they add a little, oh, here's a rumble feature that feels a little bit different, right? But it's like, that doesn't change my gameplay experience. Like, I grew up during the NES, Super Nintendo days and so on, right? And every single time a console came out, it also completely changed what genres we could make, simply because the input device would change, right? So on the NES, you only had like 2 action buttons on the front, right? Then you also had slide select. That was it. Super Nintendo, suddenly you had shoulder buttons, right? And you had 4 action buttons. So suddenly you could do a lot more complex stuff, right? And then I remember the Shoshinkai, what later became the Space World, Nintendo introduced the analog stick. And then it was like, whoa, mind-blowing, right? This is the way you could control 3D characters. Then Sony did another thing with like, hey, actually, you would need a second analog stick for the camera, right? So that you don't have these C buttons on the N64 controller. And then everything stopped. Right, and then it was just,
and then everything
okay,
just
so we have
became
the same dual stick controller layout still, and for some reason it stopped. It's incredibly silly to me, right? And every time I bring this up with some platform holders, right, I hear that, well, but this is what people are used to and so on, right? But you could have made the same argument on the NES, right? Like, let's not add more action buttons because that's what people are used to. What I would love to see, apart from just better specs, is split sixth controllers. That would make a huge difference. That would allow us to create entirely new genres. And it's a little bit sad that a company like Oculus back then, or Meta now, right, literally created the best controllers out there before console developers did. That's just, I don't know what to say, you know? Like, I would love to see that, because that would allow us to do things that
I think that's what he's talking about.
Straight up couldn't be done. Apart from just graphics look better, or, oh, we have more memory and can do more things, right? I would love to see things where it's like, okay, we can create entirely new genres because we have better input devices.
That's a really interesting thought. Like, I'm not super into VR. I don't like putting something on my head, but they really did try a lot of interesting stuff with their controllers and how that works within the game.
Let's keep in mind though, right, with the split sixth of controls, what I'm saying is this isn't about VR. I don't care about like, let's cut the VR part, right? Like the whole thing where I put something on my head, but just take the controllers. I can guarantee you, if you give me those 2 controllers right now and 2 weeks of my time with a good engineer, right, I could create a first-person shooter that plays better than anything else on the market, simply because of the input device, right? And that is just absolutely crazy to me that Sony or Microsoft wouldn't, you know, like immediately head into that direction. Because if you make the box where any first-person game plays drastically better than on other consoles, that to me seems like a home run, right? I don't care about the VR part. That's, you know, cool for some people, right?
Yeah.
But the split sixth of controllers, we could do things that are insane.
It could also add an element of accessibility too. That's a really interesting thought. I hadn't even considered that, honestly. Going back, let's talk about No Rest for the Wicked. We do have questions about your latest endeavor. Luke says, he talked about the in-game economy, and I do remember that being an issue sort of around launch, where money was, or the currency was a little bit of a tricky thing. Can you go into what you ended up changing and how you address feedback to that initial point of criticism?
I mean, so basically what happened with No Rest for the Wicked is that we had the launch release, right? Where for a long time, only us developers played, and well, we played it a certain way, right? And then after launch of early access, well, we saw for the first time how a large group of just players would play, right? So for months and months, we just basically released hot fixes and patches and so on and tried to address that, right? Tweak the economy, tweak the whole bunch of stuff. And yeah, just tune things so that it would feel good. There's always this difficult thing of like, you need to create a need in players, right? Which also means every now and then you want to run out of things, so that you have a need of like, okay, I need to go back out into the Mariner's Keep and get these resources and so on, right? And that's a good thing. But it should also, like, you walk this tight balance of like, you know, I need to create a need, but you also shouldn't constantly feel starved, right? And you also shouldn't constantly feel like you're rich or you have too much and there's no sinks for the resources that you're getting. So there's just tons and tons of changes generally regarding this stuff. This is the kind of thing that we're tuning all the time, right? And yeah, there's just probably too much to go into. I could talk for an hour right now about just economy and those kind of things.
So it's better now, though. Long story short, it's better if I were to start today.
Yes. So we're currently working on a huge update. The breach.
The
We have our
breach.
Wicked Insight coming up on March 11th.
Yeah.
And for the breach, that's the thing where we just, we went all out. Like we went absolutely crazy.
Balls
and
to the
added
wall,
more story, added
boys.
more zones, more systems, more everything. That will be very interesting to see how people will react to that. Because ultimately our goal is we want to, at Moon, we basically have this thing of like every genre that we work on, we want to contribute to it and up the ante, right? So I think we did that with Metroidvanias. If you remember back then, before we did Ori, we launched Ori in 2015, right? And for a good long time there, from like 2000 something till 2015, nobody made Metroidvanias, right? Even Konami, they couldn't do a Metroidvania on the consoles, right? And that's why Igarashi left and so on, right? Because it was just seen as like nobody cares, right? And then we did one, right? And I think Ori, to a large degree, helped spark the flame again to show everybody, guys, this can make a lot of money. People love these kind of games. By now, if you look at the Ori series, we sold over 10 million copies just on Steam, right?
Wow.
Just on Steam.
That's amazing.
And then nowadays you see tons and tons of Metroidvanias come out, right? And No Rest for the Wicked was a similar thing to me, where I looked at ARPGs and I was not happy with the evolution of that, right? Because I played Diablo 2 in the early 2000s when it came out, and I loved the idea of that, right? And like just playing it. And I was already imagining back then, oh my God, imagine if this is what we have right now, imagine the kind of games we're playing in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, right? But then nothing really happened, right? You could make the case actually that, well, those games became worse because they've been streamlined too much. Things that were really complex and cool back then were just taken out so that it's more casual friendly and so on, right? And so we just saw an opportunity there, and we basically said, look, we're going to fix that, right? Because if we wait until somebody else fixes it, we'll be 90 years old. So somebody has to fix it.
Someone's got to do it. It might as well be them. All right. If you guys want to check out the rest of Destin's interview with Thomas, the link is in the description. Go give it a watch. I might be listening to this a little bit later, probably not live, just because we're going to have way more information to discuss here on this. Now, again, if you guys don't want to watch me react to this, you can always just use the links in the description. I have the Twitch link up where this is live on Twitch, and I'm sure that there'll be a YouTube video. I don't have the link for that, but if I can find that link, I'll be sure to pop that up as well for you. If you guys enjoy the content and want to support it for free, that like button here on YouTube is the easiest way to do that. Thank you guys already for the 38 likes on today's stream. Absolutely. Thank you. Really appreciate that support. We've got 5 minutes till this kicks off. And I see a couple of people in chat, a little bit of confusion. Let's go ahead and try to hopefully help give everybody the expectations they need. I do not believe the update is today. I would love for the update to be today. I'm setting my expectations for early April for this update to officially drop. Then I do think that they're going to have an update that's going to follow roughly fairly quickly, meaning within a month or month and a half, hopefully, which would be the multiplayer update. That's the timeline that I'm operating off of at the moment. Early April for the breach update, mid-May for the multiplayer update. And that is essentially the timeline that I'm thinking. So I do not expect that we will have an update today. I would love to be wrong. Updates, if they manage to do that, I think that's going to be great. And then I think I have to go request the rest of the day off work so we can hang out and play the breach. But I have not taken the rest of the day off of work. I've only asked her. I was like, I need 2 hours, guys. We'll see how long also this is. I'd be very curious as to see what you guys think. Like, is this going to be like a 30-minute thing, an hour thing? I hope it's not. If it's 2 hours, you're going to see me slide over and be like, Hey, work guys. I'm a little bit delayed. my long lunch turned into a really long lunch. Good thing I've got a little extra overtime already in the bank. Boom, baby. Yeah, so that's what we got. We have 3 minutes, 20 seconds until this officially kicks off here on Twitch. I've been looking forward to this all year. There's been some things that I've been able to see that I'm really excited for you guys to officially be able to see. And I know that people have been playing in the FNF. I'm not under an NDA. I do not have access to the build, but I really am looking forward to it. And us all getting on in that regards. Clifford says Brian got hungry for the content. Absolutely. Back Seat over on Twitch says there are some big games coming in April. Elden Ring's new game, the Night Rain. I'm really interested in that, the multiplayer version of that. I think that's happening in April. My return to gaming and general content happens after Easter, so I think April's gonna be fun. It's looking good. Springtime, baby. Yeah. Am I hungry? Yes, I'm very hungry. My diet of electrolytes Monday through Saturday, and maybe a little protein powder. It does have the tummy rumbling. Yeah, Elden Ring's multiplayer is going to be something very interesting to see. As somebody who's new to the game and still hasn't beaten it, it's really good. And then the idea that playing with friends, I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I do wonder with Elden Ring multiplayer, I'm assuming there's going to be friendly fire. I mean, like friendly fire is going to be turned off, so you can actually hit each other. Because otherwise, it's just going to become a Zerg fest. That's one of the things that No Rest with Wicked's going to have. It's going to have that friendly, like you can accidentally kill your friends. And that is the way it should be. That's something that I think Helldivers really kind of proved out. Yes, I am alive. I'm happier than I like. This has been one of the best lints I've had so far, Yemrin. It's been really good. Feeling good. Outside, like I have a little bit of a cold right now, but outside of that, like everything's just going. 1 minute, guys. We made it. Thank you all for coming in early and hanging out with me while we talk and break down some of the new content. So it's been good. I'm excited. I'm gonna go ahead and full screen that up here as well. Man. Backseat says in the net test last month they had it turned off, so I'm thinking of no rest, skill, and friendly fire. Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about the Night Rain. They didn't need. Oh wow, John says no PvP in Night Rain. That's mind-boggling. It's interesting, right? Because there is definitely probably a market for that. There is a little bit of PvP in Elden Ring, though. Like just playing them around, and somebody just comes into your world and decides to go mess with you. 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna turn up the volume. Oh, the pipe! The pipe! Oh, yeah. Let's go, baby. Oh, dude, the music in this game is so good.
Hey, everyone. I'm Thomas.
And I'm Gennady. Welcome to our second Wicked Inside.
We know a lot of you have been eagerly waiting to hear more from us since we shipped our last major content update.
Right after early access launch, we spent weeks listening intently to your feedback while putting out numerous hotfixes and patches.
Then, after we felt that No Rest for the Wicked was in a good spot, we launched our first big content update, the Crucible.
Yes!
With the Crucible, we introduced fresh enemies, brand new systems, and a fun mode to keep everyone entertained while we began work on our next major content update. But it's been a while since then, and today we'd like to explain why.
Yep.
Our
let's get into
publisher
it.
for No Rest for the Wicked was Private Division, a subsidiary of Take-Two Interactive.
Take-Two decided to sell off Private Division, which was unexpected news for us. After some deliberation, we saw an opportunity.
After months of negotiations, we reached an agreement to buy the publishing rights for No Rest for the Wicked back so that Moon Studios could become fully independent.
There it is.
This legal process took time, and we couldn't say much while it was all happening.
But today, we're excited to announce that it's all done and that Moon Studios is now fully independent.
Yeah.
We believe this will give you even more confidence in our vision because we're free to build No Rest for the Wicked exactly how we want without needing to ever go silent again.
We've used this extra time to create something truly special. Let's take a look at The Breach.
The Breach represents the biggest content update we have ever shipped. We have heard you loud and clear. You wanted more out of our campaign. You wanted more story,
Yes.
more zones to play in, more enemies to fight,
Yep.
more bosses to test your metal against.
Yes. Oh, look at
In
that.
short, more of everything. And that is exactly what we have been focusing on.
Our story continues immediately following Ellsworth's return to Sacrament. He summons his daughter Odessa from her prison cell, and their exchange reveals more about their relationship.
Take the upper passage out, then leave by the northwest gate.
What are you doing?
God Benedict often sleeps on duty, and the ramparts above him will be unmanned. Head north to Ermgard and Merrin, or west to the Glades. Anywhere but here.
So that's it then.
You have to go.
All right.
As a Saren, players will have to venture forth into new areas we're introducing for the Breach. These are massive zones that essentially double the size of the world players got to explore so far. A lot has changed in the Soul of Sacra
that was all
since
new
you've
right
last
there.
visited.
Look at this.
Southeast of Sacrament lies the Lowland Meadows, a once idyllic haven used by Sacrament's hunters to gather food and supplies.
Okay. New zone. Sweet.
Ellsworth requests our presence on a secret mission, but a faction known as the Harvesters has taken over the region.
See? I told you this Saren would come, and here they are.
Indeed. Your presence is welcome here. My friend is convinced that some threat awaits us at the Weeping Sisters.
As always at Moon, when it comes to level design, we deliberately craft every single inch of our world by hand.
Man,
We
guys,
do not
this is
rely
just
on any
breathtaking.
procedural generation, and we believe that ultimately that will allow us to create an insanely expansive, interactive open world where every inch actually matters.
Throughout your journey through the meadows, you will encounter all new enemies. We have also introduced 2 new weapon archetypes, gauntlets and wands.
There we go.
Let's take a look at how these new weapons can be used to take down all new foes that you will encounter.
That's awesome.
The Timberwhite here will try to take your life with his ginormous great axe. We know some of you already love being able
Here's
to
the boxing.
suplex enemies in Wicked.
Oh,
It was only
yes!
appropriate we introduced a dropkick.
That's cool. Yes, Hadouken!
Wormwood wretches and limb-seed archers will keep you on your toes with brutal range attacks. Our tremor wave will make quick work of them.
Oh, that's cool.
Rust reavers present an even greater challenge. Equipped with 2 huge saws, your best bet is to keep your distance and counter when you find an opening.
Oh, look at that. Dude, animations
Deeper
are
within the
on
meadows,
point.
the Copse Treader will try to block your path forward.
Snake.
Study his movement patterns and keep a cool head. you might just prevail. Obviously, we are also introducing all new bosses for the breach,
Yes.
but we don't want to spoil everything just yet.
Please don't. Please don't.
We know a lot of you already enjoyed how much love and care we're putting into all of these areas. And once again, we didn't shy away from really using verticality and hiding secrets everywhere. Even though you'll often fight for your life in all of these zones, every now and then you'll get to enjoy a serene scene of beauty. Things have changed in Sacrament too. Caretaker Alden has arrived in town to plead for help, dealing with the Blight, a plague infestation destroying his home of Marin Village.
Excuse me, is it true that Governor Ellsworth has already gone north with that madrigal? The guard said as much, but I wasn't sure. Many doors in Sacrament stay shut to us, Dasha.
And if you exit Sacrament through its northwestern gate, you will find yourself in the once majestic Marin Woods.
Here we go. Marin Woods, baby.
Recently, the Marin Woods have been befallen by the Blight. It festered all throughout the woods, and players will have to find a way past it in order to advance. The Belak Tor are ferocious fighters. The Stalkinche here knows how to wield a club, and if you're not careful, they might just call in reinforcements. Our new wand spells are surprisingly effective. We can cast ice darts to freeze our enemies. Cold Sling is a powerful ice evasion attack.
Fascinating. Oh, he didn't fall off. That would have been. I would have fallen off.
For the Heavy Feather, we'll use some more powerful spells our wands provide. We have since learned how to perform the Riven Twins Plague Explosion. And if you have enough focus, Lightning Bolt makes quick work of any enemy.
Yeah! Oh, that's awesome.
Halfway through Marin Woods, you'll encounter Marin Village, a peaceful woodland community of Isola Sacra.
First traveler I've seen in ages. I'm amazed you made it to our village at all, stranger. Hardly anyone comes here anymore.
10,000 blessings, Serim, for returning us to ourselves.
The villagers in Marin provide new services and sell different items than the ones in Sacrament.
My clod of a cousin's still hammering away in Sacrament. Figured they would have run him off by now. Chased them out of town with their crooked pitchforks and bent spears. Might as well give it here.
In Marin, we will also meet Odessa's godmother, Irmgard, a connection to her Dasha heritage.
Interesting.
I remember when my mother used to sing me to sleep. You did too. Same lullaby.
Will I see you there? All of us at one table again?
I'm not welcome in Sacrament.
And in a return to the Nameless Pass, we'll explore new areas within it, learning more about the forces of the mainland.
We will not tolerate any more doubt within your ranks, Primus. Not while we knock on salvation's door.
Discipline takes time. It's earned, not bought.
The born god disagrees. Discipline is forged. It is a tool, molded in flame.
Meanwhile, we'll continue the story of Madrigal Celine and her vanguard, who seek to liberate the lost city of Kalin.
We're incredibly excited about this new chapter in our campaign, but we don't want to spoil everything.
Yeah,
just
please don't.
Our intention for No Rest for the Wicked was always to provide players with an insane amount of content, even after they finish the campaign.
Nice. Like system?
After the events that unfold throughout the breach, our Spilled Blood questline continues as any area within Isola Sacra can now be overtaken by the pestilence.
Yeah, plague system!
Once an area is infected, you will suddenly have to fight enemies that you never encountered before in these areas. Defeat these enemies, and they might just drop all new Torn resources. Torn resources can be burned at any fire in order to further increase the challenge within an infected area.
Whoa! That's interesting.
You will need to heavily upgrade your gear and perfect your build in order to succeed.
They said they want the plague system to be what the Crucible was. The Crucible. Like really
but greater challenge
a lot
also
of stuff
means
to the open
greater
world.
rewards. Notice that with every enemy you slay, the pestilence spread meter at the bottom of the screen reduces.
Okay.
Slay enough enemies, and you will have to overcome only one more obstacle.
Whoa, all right.
Getting rid of the infection means ripping it out at its root. If you manage to defeat the plague boss within the infected area, the entire zone will be cleansed of the pestilence once more.
There we go.
Our life system has also gotten a huge update. You will now find many more factions being able to take over the various areas within Isola Sacra. Our goal with all of this is to change the way players think about retraversal in video games. We ultimately want to make every return feel as fresh and as exciting as it was the first time you played. And as you can see, we also introduced entirely new levels within the areas you're already familiar with.
Systems and theory crafting, let's go.
In order to aid players in achieving the perfect build, we introduced quite a few changes that will make progression a whole lot more streamlined and fun. First off, we have revamped the way gear drops. We replaced the tiered approach and came up with a formula that takes the player level, the area level, and the enemy level into account, which results in an experience where any gear that drops will be approximately within your level range.
Okay.
Now, gear that used to only drop in earlier zones might just drop again, but at a higher level. We tried this out, and we ultimately see a much higher variety of gear throughout our playthroughs.
Okay.
I think it's a much more enjoyable looting experience.
Another big aspect that defines your build is, of course, the enchantments. So far, if your gear didn't drop with the enchantments you needed, your item would never reach its full potential.
Yep.
But we came up with a solution. If an item dropped with less than maximum possible amount of enchantments, you can now use a Fallen Ember to add another random enchantment to it.
Awesome.
And if you have an enchantment on one of your items that doesn't quite fit your playstyle, Fallen Embers can now be used to re-roll that particular enchantment. Of course, Fallen Embers are also still used for respeccing your character,
Yes.
which makes Embers
Perfect.
insanely valuable now.
Super useful resource.
We also introduced a new weapon rarity, Masterworks. Any Masterwork starts out as just a common item. If you decide to forego the RNG aspects of Wicked,
There's
you
the-
can bank
the
on
pipe.
gems in order to
Pipe.
fully customize your
In the
item.
game. Let's
Gems
go.
will now show you exactly what effect they'll have, depending on which item you slot them into. In our case here, we want to craft a build that heavily relies on and synergizes with focus. The benefit of common items is that we can completely customize them. Once we've fitted the maximum amount of gems into them, they now become a masterwork.
Ooh, okay.
In general, we've introduced a whole slew of new weapons, runes, and armor sets. We've also iterated on our list of enchantments in order to enable the creation of entirely new builds, while ridding ourselves of the enchantments that led to overpowered builds. Given that, and the new loot drop algorithm, the sky is the limit when it comes to build variety.
We also conducted a major balance pass on our stats, and we noticed that quite a lot of you didn't use shields all that much. So we changed the way they work. Instead of draining stamina, shields are now based around poise and stagger, and we try to ensure that each shield archetype feels unique.
Nice.
So we can't wait to see
nice.
all your new sword and board.
Let's go
builds.
Paladin build, baby. Yeah, it might be the first thing I work on.
Last
Actually,
but not least,
I use shields.
if you've become a master playing No Rest for the Wicked, you should try our new hardcore characters.
Yeah!
Permadeath is enabled for these, so once these characters die, they get downgraded to non-hardcore characters that can only be played on regular realms.
That's awesome. It's finally
I wonder who
happening.
will be the first player to slay the Econite with a hardcore character.
Oh, let's freaking go, boys!
Naturally, we also spent quite some time introducing a wide range of quality of life features and polished up what we've played so far of No Rest for the Wicked. For example, we've noticed that a lot of your houses looked similar to this one.
Yeah, pretty much.
Storage has always been incredibly important in any ARPG. On our current live builds, players can stack all that many items, and sorting hasn't been ideal yet. Let's switch over to our Breach update. We fixed that right up, and now allow players to stack a whole lot more items
Oh,
within their chests.
99 stacks! Yes!
And items now also get sorted in a beautiful way.
That's gonna help out dramatically.
While we're in our home, we
Yeah.
can show off another cool feature we added. We've added Whisper Stones, which enable fast travel to and from your house. So if you just want to quickly drop off items and gear while you're out and about,
that's so
instead of
nice.
having to first warp to Sacrament and then run to your
That's
home,
so
you can
nice.
now save that one step. Remember that you can place one Whisper Stone per house, so if you own multiple ones, you can even fast travel between them.
Oh.
Our next change regards food cooldowns.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right.
We've removed
an
the
extra
classic
motion.
cooldowns entirely. Now you can consume meals
But
instantly.
you get full. You get full.
However, your stomach is no longer a bottomless pit. You have a limited number of meals you can eat during combat.
Yeah, that's going to be a big change.
You'll be able to upgrade this limit through Plague Ichor,
Oh, nice.
letting you extend how many times you can heal or buff yourself. and back.
Yeah.
This new approach aims to make combat more engaging and dynamic, rather than forcing players to just wait for a timer.
Time ticks ever forward.
We know timers and project wait times have been a major discussion point in our community. We're adding a new feature so you can contribute food and ingredients to make Adanas's workers, speeding up whichever building project they're currently tackling.
Nice.
We're always listening to your feedback, and we will keep iterating on the
I'm
system.
liking that
If you
a
have
lot.
thoughts, please keep sharing them.
And of
Right,
course,
everybody's
we've been
gonna be
hard at
restarting,
work
just heads up.
meticulously optimizing performance. If you notice any poor performance in a machine before, the Breach update should drastically improve your experience. Speaking of improvements, our DLSS implementation has been updated to a newer version, which results in much crisper image and even better performance. And these are just a few highlights. In total, we're counting more than 11,000 changes since we shipped the Crucible update.
Dude, that's going to be one awful long patch note video.
Before we dive deeper, we'd like to clarify
summarize,
how
Brian.
you'll access the breach. You will need to replay No Rest for the Wicked to
there it
fully
is.
experience this update. Old saves remain in a legacy build, but this approach ensures the breach is integrated as seamlessly as possible into the game. We realize this might be a surprise for some. Ultimately, the scope of the breach and the underlying changes led us here. But don't worry, you'll discover plenty of fresh content, quests, and loot to make restarting your journey worthwhile.
Yeah, we covered this in October, I think.
Let's discuss our roadmap next.
Roadmap!
It goes without saying that we will heavily support the breach for the upcoming weeks after launch. You will once again see us react incredibly quickly to all of the feedback you guys might provide.
But we're also already hard at work on our next content drops. We've received hundreds, if not thousands of pleas begging for the co-op update. And we know that our original roadmap had co-op before the breach. Rest assured, it will be the next thing we launch after this update.
The reason we ultimately decided to switch these updates was because we wanted people to have more content to play once co-op releases. With the breach update, there will be now a lot more content to explore with your friends.
After the co-op update, we'll be following up with more improvements
Sacrament
and new
update,
systems.
I think is what they're
We'll
calling that one.
expand Sacrament, improve housing, introduce farming, expand the Crucible, and of course, finish the campaign with more story and more quests and bosses. And we are very much aware that a lot of you finally want to play No Rest for the Wicked on all major consoles.
We have a ton of things planned to further improve on the foundation that we've laid so far, and we're excited to keep discussing all of these new releases and changes with you as we go along.
Also, today marks the 10th anniversary of Ori.
Okay.
We released Ori and the Blind Forest on March 11th, 2015. It's been a wild ride for all of us here at Moon. So today, we'd like to use this opportunity to just say thank you.
Thank you to all of our fans who have supported us the whole way through. We would not be where we are today without you. We're now hard at work on the final bug fixing and polishing stages of this massive update. We want to make sure we get it just right.
Give us the date.
Before we wrap up, there is one more thing, and this one is near and dear to our hearts.
Hello everyone, I'm Gareth Coker. My story with Moon Studios began more than 15 years ago when I received a message on an internet forum from them asking me if I'd be interested in composing the music for a small indie project. 4 years later, that small project blossomed into Ori and the Blind Forest. Now, we were all very young and just getting started, so for our second release, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, we set out to perfect everything about the original, and I couldn't be more proud of what we were able to create together. But our journey is not yet over. I'm happy to announce that I've been hard at work crafting an unforgettable score for the story, the characters, the locations, and the boss fights of No Rest for the Wicked. And you will finally be able to hear some ambient music while out exploring in the world too. I can't wait to see where this journey leads us once again. It leaves me to invite you to experience the all-new music in No Rest for the Wicked with the Breach update, launching on April the 30th.
Yeah,
it will be
April
well worth the
30th.
wait.
Oh, okay. All right. I was thinking more like the 18th, but look at that. Listen to that music, guys. The Breach. Is that a Thursday? We got a April 30th. Okay. Very Tolkien-esque in terms of its sound. Yeah, dude. Taking the day off. Oh, wait. What? It's a goat. It's a goat. And I guess I'm gonna have that maybe on repeat or something like that. Or all right, that was good. I'm sure that people like the goat. They like that. That's sweet. All right, so we got April 30th. Let's pull up a calendar. I'm gonna try not to dox myself. Calendar, calculator, calendar. All right. Can I replay that? No? All right. It is what it is. Okay, where'd my calendar go? There we go. April the 30th. Let's go to the month view. Get out of March into April. The 30th is a Wednesday. Okay, that's good to know. So officially Easter, as my voice cracks because of puberty, drops on the 20th. So that honestly, I guess that's what we got. I'm gonna put my thoughts together, and perhaps to kind of cut this with the reaction for everybody, for those who don't want to watch a VOD. But yeah, how you guys feeling about all this? It's an expected date for Sasano. I was thinking it might be more. I was thinking around like the 18th or the 17th, because they tend to release on those Thursdays. But April the 30th, at least we have the date, right? At least we have the date. That's going to be really, really important. You wonder if the last scene with the goat is a teaser with the ships. He was on a little bit of a boat. He was on a little bit of a boat. Now, when it comes to the roadmap, I see Doran over on the Twitch chat asking about that. The roadmap is basically this: Breach, followed by multiplayer, followed by the Sacrament update, followed by what I would call perhaps the Combat 2.0 update, where they've talked about like bringing in the skill trees. And there's a lot of things like that going on, most likely followed by 1.0. That's kind of the roadmap that we're thinking on. So if this update happens on the 30th, I think that could put let me just go into it, April. I was thinking mid-May, if we were thinking mid-April for that, but maybe we're going to be looking at May, end of May, June for the multiplayer update. And then from there, we will probably be looking at, I think the goal for them is, obviously high quality, but they do need to have a little bit more cadence now that officially they're independent, now that officially they can talk about all that. I think this is going to hopefully see an increase. What the term is for those not in the development world, the term is velocity. Hopefully this sees an increase in their velocity in which they're getting these things all turned around and out to us and to be played. And so for multiplayer, I'm very excited to be able to hang out with you guys, play, and we're gonna figure out how that's gonna work. I've covered the things that they've shared in terms of like nobody kind of owns a multiplayer realm, and it's kind of a vote kick. So you might have friends vote kick you off, but then you get a copy of that realm. So it's not like all is lost, but it's gonna be neat because I think especially like that I will stream and we'll play together, figuring out how to make sure we're all connected and having a good old freaking time. All right, guys. It is March the 11th. That is the Wicked Inside. I'm going to go put my thoughts down in a video and put the reaction kind of video up. If you guys are watching this, thank you for the 53 likes while live. And I wish you guys all the very best. Hopefully you all have a wonderful Lent and a happy Easter. I will be officially back in the content seat again after Easter. This was kind of my big carve out. And the nice thing is, for me, I can play video games after Easter. So there we go. Kind of works out in a way that benefits me. Streamer privilege, I guess, to wrap it up on that. All right, guys. Love you so very much. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I miss you guys. I cannot wait to get back in making some content, working on some builds, and having a good old freaking time. Wishing you all the absolute best, guys. And until next time, take care.